When I was still early in my time at Twitch, one of my managers expressed an idea that I've held strong since. Strong opinions, weakly held. The point of strong opinions weakly held is to let you move fast when you have confidence, very often to presume it's correct until you run into a problem that proves it isn't. And that mindset is how I got as good as I did, as fast as I did. While many may see my confidence as a negative, and I totally understand, I can definitely be frustrating on a team, it does help me become a much better engineer really quickly. And the speed and confidence I move with, and the speed at which I make changes when I'm wrong, it's a huge part of how I got where I am. And I'm genuinely really proud of the engineer I am today. So when I first heard of the 3 virtues of a great engineer, I was so scared that I was going to have none of them and I was going to be an imposter and all these things. And then I read them. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to be that, but I also am. And I really love these 3 virtues the more I've thought about it. It really expresses how unique a software engineer is from other jobs. And as much as these traits might be seen as negative, I think a lot of you will see the positive aspect of these virtues and probably even relate to them a bit because they are pretty powerful once you understand what they are. Credit to Larry Wall, who's one of the original Perl educators, for coming up with this quote way, way back in believe the late 90s. It's crazy how well these apply even today. The first virtue is laziness. I know that might sound crazy, but laziness is actually really valuable as an engineer because if we let ourselves do busy work that we don't have to, the speed at which we move is slower than it should be. Ideally, a developer should never have to do the same task twice if they can automate that task efficiently enough. And the whole point of software engineering is to allow us to work less hard to do more things. As such, most of the best engineers have some amount of laziness baked into them. Laziness is not great alone though, because if you're lazy and don't care how you're seen or care about the quality of your work, you're just not going to do anything. But if laziness is holding you back from getting what you want, then it can actually be really useful because you can build things to let you stay lazy and still get what you want. And for a lot of the best devs, sadly, just wanting things isn't enough motivation for devs. The best devs are often driven by things they don't want. And what do we want less than feeling stupid? Laziness by itself certainly doesn't make a dev better. When combined with these other virtues, it's a pretty powerful driver because if you're also impatient, you have to find ways to work around the laziness. That's why impatience is the second virtue. You should feel angry when your computer is doing things slower than it could or not doing the things you need it to. You should feel a primal frustration when you know how simple a thing can be and it isn't. Like when I built Upload Thing after a year of complaining about there not being a better way to use S3. I did that because I was so frustrated this thing was harder than it needed to be. So I went out of my way to make it easier so I could also be lazy in the future. But how do I find that motivation? What drives me to care in the first place? And more importantly, what drives me to make a solution that's actually good? This is where the third virtue comes in so clutch. Hubris. You should be proud of the things you're building, and you should build with pride in mind. You should be able to take a step back and say, I'm proud of this thing I built, it's great. Or sometimes, I'm proud that I built this thing as quickly as I did. I know it's not great. But being able to take pride in your work and recognizing that your laziness and your impatience aren't going to prevent you from doing something you're proud of, that is essential to becoming an incredible developer. And I'll tell you confidently, most of the best devs I've met had a pretty good bit of hubris. I'm not going to say they were the most arrogant assholes ever. They certainly weren't. They had to be humble enough to recognize when they're wrong. But they had to have enough hubris to be right in the first place. And I think as crazy as these qualities might sound, in fact, most of them are kind of negatives. I've been surprised at how combined they often result in really talented developers. So it's okay to be lazy. It's okay to be impatient. It's certainly okay to be a little bit cocky as long as you're constantly pushing yourself to be better at delivering good software. And this round is a little bit different. It's a thing I think a lot about, and it came up in chat, so I figured I'd talk about it more here. If you want to know more about the leadership side of development and what it takes to be a good manager and have a good relationship with your team, I'll put a video about that in the corner. I honestly think this is one of my best videos, and I hope you agree. Thank you as always, guys. Peace, nerds.